Good evening, very warm welcome to you, and thank you for joining us for our Taste, Learn and Discover with Pont. We're looking at new vintage of Hurley Vineyard Pinot Noirs from the Mornington Peninsula, which, well, I won't say anything, but yes, I think they're spectacular. Just before we get started, a couple of formalities. As usual, if you hopefully received your tasting notes along with your pack when you purchased, and hopefully you've got your wines poured left to right, 1 to 4. Other than that, we're good to go. So I had the pleasure of first meeting Kevin some time ago, trying the wines, and I must say they made the same impression then as they did when I was lucky enough to taste them, albeit or discuss them with him, albeit via Zoom a couple of weeks ago. But for mine, one of the great Pinot Noir producers in Australia, but maybe not recognised as such. I think they're still a little bit under the radar, maybe because of their very small volume and them always selling out. So 4 wines from the 2018 vintage, which Kevin was very pleased with. Started off with quite a wet winter and then sort of perfect ripening after that. He equates it to the vintages of 2004 and 1994, which were both still some wines drinking very well. And a great follow-on from 17, which is quite a sort of warm, rich sort of year. So these wines, maybe a touch more sort of lacy and elegant. The vineyard was established in 1998, just near Balneary on the Mornington Peninsula, and since then has gone about making, I think, 4 wines from most of that time. The first wine we're going to look at is the estate wine, which is essentially just a declassified blend of the other 3 vineyards. It's worth pointing out that wines are pretty much vinified exactly the same way. So any differences that you're seeing in the wines are purely just the site. Kevin has, I sort of joked with him the other day that, you must drink, I think you need to drink a lot of great, very fine wine to make wines like this, because they just have this innate sense of balance, detail in them, and that's what you get in really great wine, especially Pinot Noir. So let's go. So the first wine, the 2018 Estate, which, as I said, is like simply a declassified blend of the other 3 vineyards. That means that it's just maybe the fruit that didn't make the cut to go into the single vineyard bottlings. Give it a smell. You would assume that this wine is the one that is made for drinking immediately. And just smelling that, it's just, lovely sort of aromatics, very detailed, for an entry point wine from the estate, just wonderful. It's worth pointing out, just, you can probably see in the glass in front of you just the colour of these wines, and you'd be foolish to judge any Pinot Noir by its colour. Like, a lot of producers are never seeking to for extraction or lots of colour. You can get plenty of complexity, flavour, and so on with wines that look like this. And some of the most complex wines can be actually the lightest coloured. With that, you're getting this lovely sort of dried rose, slightly sort of herbal. I made the note when I was tasting this first that this wine, there's variety from the Jura region in France called Sard, which is very pale in colour, but extremely, well, done properly, it can be extremely complex and almost savoury, but with this lovely sort of core of sweet fruit, very fine structure. I find some similarities in that wine. It's just delicious. The structure is there. It's lovely Pinot Noir. Right. So moving on to Lodestong. So Lodestong is the vineyard that attracts, or because of its exposition, gets the most sunlight. Maybe you see that a little bit in the wine. Again, when I tasted this, this is like Burgundy, but I found some similarities with the village of Pont. So a little bit more rustic, slightly firmer sort of tannin, maybe because of that sort of extra sunlight that it gets. The soils around Hurley are primarily, or exclusively I should say, sandstone and volcanic. So automatically you're seeing something, it's a little bit more brooding. You do pick a little bit, I get a little bit of you might call a sauvage character. So quite ripe sort of fruit on that. And you don't need to be an expert to see the difference. You can see a little bit more, quite easily, a little bit more intensity. The difference for me is just the tannins. So I find it quite a lot firmer in that wine, which gives it, lovely length, lovely sort of presence on the palate. Delicious. Right, so next wine, we're looking at Hommage 2018. And this, this wine for me, I think, well, we'll give it a try first. I love the aromas here. It's almost like this, the English would call it maybe pennyroyal, or it's like mint character. Yeah, beautiful sort of floral, sort of dried rose. This one, as we sit here now, or as I sit here now, a little bit more closed than the Lodestong, so it doesn't mean that it's, but I get this sort of, slightly firmer granitic quality in the wine. It's got this beautiful sort of core of sweet fruit. Remember that these wines are, I was saying earlier, made identically, so you're purely seeing difference in the terroir, which is the exposition, the soil type, altitude. It's a lovely wine. I can still taste that on the palate. It's got lovely sort of length, great mouthfeel, great drive through the mid-palate. So lastly, we get to Garamond 18, which, historically has always been considered the benchmark of the estate, but I think, benchmark's maybe the wrong word. It's maybe produces the most complete wines out of them, but that's only going to detract from the other wines. All delicious in their own ways. Slightly darker colour here, I've just noticed. So immediately I sort of see this there's a little bit more detail in the aromatics here. Again, it's a little bit closed, but I get this sort of slightly darker fruit spectrum, a little bit of violet, dark sort of rose or Baronia. Give it a taste. You can kind of see why this is, considered the most sort of long-term wine of the estate. It's got this lovely sort of buried tannin quality to it. The tannins are there, but they're very fine. The fruit weight is very good. It's just lovely sort of presence again on the palate. Very sort of soft, supple, but you get this impression that the wine's kind of a bit buried. Like there's more to sort of come from this. It's so great to see, Hurley doing so well, and them getting so much more sort of accolades, because people who love sort of classic Pinot Noir, these are right up at the top of the list. Certainly in Australia, and I'd think over the years to come, they're only going to improve given that the vine age will get older, and obviously Kevin will come even more sort of proficient at his craft. Absolutely delicious, that one. So there you have it. The new vintage of Hurley Vineyards 2018. Hope you enjoyed. We have good stocks, so if you require any bottles, please let us know. Thanks again.